Hello, this video explains why Brexit damaged the economy and politics, but also why simply rejoining the EU is not a magic fix. Britain's real challenge is national renewal, fixing productivity, energy, planning, state capacity, defense, and AI investment while building practical ties with Europe. 10 years after Brexit, Britain is still trying to answer a very basic question: what role should it play in the world now? The promise of Brexit was that Britain would take back control and become more flexible, more dynamic, and more independent. But the last decade has shown that leaving the European Union did not automatically solve Britain's problem. In many ways, it created new frictions and distracted the country from deeper issues. The main point of the explainer is not just the Brexit was costly. The bigger point is that Britain cannot fix its future simply by arguing again about Europe. Rejoining the EU may sound attractive to some people, but that alone will not solve the weak productivity, high energy cost, slow planning, weak state capacity, or low investment. So the real challenge is national renewal. Britain needs to fix the basics at home, strengthen the defense, invest seriously in AI and infrastructure, and build practical ties with Europe where it helps. The next decade should not be about slogan, it should be about execution. This slide shows why many people now describe the post-Brexit period as a lost decade. The 2016 referendum was close. 52% voted to leave and 48% voted to remain. That result divided the country deeply and the political argument continued for years. Economically, Brexit added friction to trade. The Office for Budget Responsibility has estimated that new trading relationships with the EU will reduce the Britain's long-run productivity by around 4% compared with staying in the EU. Reuters has also summarized research suggesting that by 2025, Britain's GDP may have been about 6 to 8% lower than what it would have been if the country had remained in the EU. At the same time, Britain's public finances remains under pressure. The budget deficit was around 4.3% of the GDP in 2025-2026, while the public debt was around 95% of the GDP. And one of the most major promises of Brexit, that migration would fall sharply, did not really work as expected. Net migration remained significant at 171,000 in the year ending December 2025 after a much larger post-Brexit surge. The message is this: Brexit does not explain every British problem, but it added the trade friction, absorbed political energy, and left Britain poorer, more divided, and less agile. This slide explains why simply trying to rejoin the European Union is not a complete solution. Closer ties with Europe can definitely help Britain. For example, reducing the barriers at food and goods trade can make the businesses easier. Cooperation in research, student exchange, and defense can also bring real benefits. And in the areas where the alignment clearly helps the economy, Britain should be practical rather than ideological. But the danger is that Britain would fall into the same trap again, believing that one big constitutional decision can solve everything. First, Brexit was sold as the silver bullet. Now, some people may treat rejoining as the next silver bullet. That could create another decade of arguments. There are also political realities. Britain does not yet have a settled majority that clearly supported EU membership. A fresh all or nothing campaign would reopen the old divisions, and the EU itself may be cautious about readmitting a country that could change the direction again in a few years. So the smarter path is pragmatic cooperation. Britain should work more closely with Europe where it makes sense, but also accept that its biggest problems are domestic: labor force participation, planning delays, high energy costs, tax and regulatory burden, and weak state capacity. This slide focuses on what Britain actually needs to do. First, more people need to get into work, especially younger people and those who are economically inactive. A stronger labor market is essential for growth and public finances. Second, Britain needs faster planning decisions. Housing, transport, energy infrastructure, and data centers are often delayed by too many veto points and slow approvals. If the country cannot build, it cannot grow. Third, energy needs to become cheaper and more abundant. High energy costs hurt the households, factories, and future industries like AI data centers. Fourth, taxes and negotiations and the regulations needed to be simpler so firms can invest higher and scale. Businesses need confidence that Britain is a place where growth is rewarded. Fifth, power need to move beyond Westminster. Cities and regions should have more ability to make decisions quickly because local problems often need local solutions. And sixth, Britain should cooperate pragmatically with the EU on trade, food standards, research, and student exchanges. The central message is simple: there are no silver bullets. National renewal means hard choices, trade offs, and much better execution. This slide looks at one area where Britain can still rebuild the influence quickly. That is, the European security. The world has changed a lot since the Brexit vote. Europe is facing a much harder security environment. Russia's war against Ukraine has reminded government that defense and deterrence matter. At the same time, America's commitment to Europe looks less predictable than once it did. This gives Britain a golden opportunity. Even after Brexit, Britain still has a serious strategic asset: intelligence capability, a defense industry, diplomatic experience, nuclear deterrence, and operational military knowledge. It also played an important role in supporting Ukraine. Because of this, closer UK-EU security cooperation is not just useful, it is becoming strategically necessary. This does not require Britain to rejoin the EU. It requires Britain and Europe to work together where the interests clearly overlap. But there is a warning. If Britain talks big on defense but does not invest enough, it will look weaker than it should. To lead in the European security, Britain needs real capability, not just rhetoric. Security is one of the fastest ways a Britain can rebuild the influence in Europe. This slide explains why artificial intelligence is a major test for Britain's future. Britain has genuine advantages in AI. It has strong universities, good research institutions, innovative startups, creative industries, and a deep pool of tech talent. These are the real strengths. The government has also an ambitious plans, including the AI Opportunities Action Plan and the AI Research Resource. Official compute projects such as Dawn and Isambard AI are a part of an effort to expand Britain's AI capacity with a broader goal of significantly increase compute power by 2030. But ambition is not enough. AI needs infrastructure, it needs data center, reliable energy, fast planning approvals, skilled workers, and a stable policy environment. If energy is too expensive, planning is too slow, or regulations feels uncertain, investment can move elsewhere. So AI is not just a technology story. It is a test of whether Britain can build again. If Britain gets this right, AI could help improve the productivity and support the growth. But if the Britain fails to remove the bottlenecks, it could miss one of the biggest economic opportunities of the next decade. The final slide brings the arguments together. Britain's next decade should not be about replaying the Brexit fight again and again. The country first need to accept the Brexit was costly. That does not mean every problem comes from Brexit, but it does mean that the country should be honest about the damage. Second, Britain needs to stop hunting for silver bullets. Neither leaving EU nor rejoining the EU can magically solve the deep economic and institutional problems. Third, Britain must fix the basics: work, planning, energy, investment, and state capacity. These are the foundations of growth. Fourth, Britain should use the security and AI as an engine of renewal. Security gives Britain a chance to rebuild the influence in Europe. AI gives Britain a chance to raise productivity and compete in future industries. And fifth, Britain should build pragmatic ties with Europe without making Europe the whole story. Cooperations can help, but national renewal must come from domestic reforms. The main final message is this: Britain's next chapter will be written by choices, not slogans. Thank you.